Hello friends, this is Luke, the director of the yoga school, and I'm going to be giving you an overview of Module 5. So the Module 5 deals very much with what is happening right now in the contemporary time of yoga, particularly in our lineage, the Ashtanga Yoga School. Of course, David Garrigues is the sort of master of that genre, so we look a lot at what his teachings are, and we look at his materials, study materials, books, online materials, so that there's just a plethora of videos. And so we look at his Asana kitchen videos, his study materials, and we kind of look at David as definitely the Ashtanga Yoga School, sort of the pinnacle of that style. We look at the sequencing logic, so of course we understand the Ashtanga system and the primary and intermediate, as it were, but we look into the sequencing logic for people to come up with their own sequences. For example, as a student of David's, I was able to move forward and teach for the Multiple Sclerosis Association of America and come up with sequences particularly designed for people with MS. And it's kind of a hallmark of the Krishnamacharya lineage, is that you should be able to take this root foundation knowledge and apply that. And so we use David's systems to do that. Of course, David, influenced by the teachers brought out in previous modules, particularly Tabi Joyce and BKS Iyengar. We look into adjustments, and particularly at this point in the training, we're talking about fine-tuning our adjustments. You know, these are not necessarily like wrenching people over. This is the way that it would actually be taught in a class, and much more applied. The type of teaching at this point is applied, and we'll do student teaching where students will come in and they'll teach based on a specific type of person. So they might choose like a person named Debbie that has perhaps post-polio, or perhaps a physical problem with an arm or something like that, and describe what the class is for and then teach it to everyone and get feedback that way. So a lot of student teaching at this point designed around specific types of people or types of bodies. You might say, we're going to try to teach a class for kids. Or we might say, this is traditional Ashtanga class, Vande Gurunam, and go through the paces that way. So a lot of students going in their own ways, in their own directions at this time, as far as their individual teaching styles. There's a lot of experimentation involved at this time. We're going to talk about sustainable asana, about how to practice yoga through your whole life. Is something that a lot of people have opinions about, but we're going to just look at the reality of asana over a long period of time and what that may look like for different people. We're going to talk a lot about ethics and business. Without a margin, you have no mission, so we are going to talk about business frameworks, particularly customer lifetime value, basic accounting like contribution margin, income statements or profit and loss, and ways that yoga schools can make sure that their bases are covered that way, so that they're not focused so much on their finances, so that they can move forward into the reason why we are involved in yoga in a business context, if that's what somebody wants to do. We try to give you a platform so that you could go out and make it in the world if you had to. Not an easy thing to make money at. We look a lot at ethical standards, both in business, how you approach things. We look into, there's a few reading materials about branding and about differentiation, about how like your style of yoga is going to bring in a certain type of student, and how to respect other yoga schools and collaborate with other yoga schools to make sure that you're really serving the community and serving the public, and not just trying to like be sort of self-centered, as it were. So there's a lot of discussion with that business-wise, but also kind of gets into ethics. We look at the Yoga Alliance ethical standards. As this is a profession, there is a fairly set group of standards that we abide by. So we want to look into those and see what we think about it. We may not agree with all of the sort of commonly accepted ethical standards in teaching yoga, especially in America, which the U.S., the United States of America, where yoga is very new, and it's really not the type of yoga that was taught in India and places like that. It's been around a lot longer. So we want to really explore the ethics of teaching yoga, both in terms of business and application, and how we teach, and how we adjust, and how we treat our students. How to be an important medium for the transmission of yoga into the communities. We're going to look a lot at ethical standards as teachers, sort of abuses of power that seem to be very common, abuses of power, both in terms of authority and ego, and of course sexual assault, especially Patabi Joyce, and we'll look at some of the things that have happened over the years where we have some really good, strong case studies on where these abuses of power took place, maybe some key factors in how to be aware of it and what it is, and we're going to look into that for sure. Some difficult conversations probably in that part of the training, but they definitely are a part of the training. It's important. So luckily for us, we do have great resources that way, both locally here at the Shala, in this community, and of course through Yoga Alliance. We have some great resources that way and some good guidelines. But it's a good discussion to have amongst teachers. So we're going to look at sexual assault, sexual abuse that's happened within yoga teaching, and we'll also look at social justice. So racism is definitely a very big part of the history of yoga. So the Dravidian peoples definitely experienced that, so we'll learn that through the history of yoga, and then we're going to talk about what yoga philosophy and the practice of yoga sort of provides us as a platform to understand our position as yogis in social justice, and so how we can make our teaching a bit of a social justice statement. And of course we'll relate that to ahimsa, satya, and the yamas and niyamas, which there's several important figures, but Mohandas or Mahatma Gandhi is the most prominent in the training, and we'll look at satyagraha and how ahimsa and karma yoga, as it were, or the yoga of action, is a very big part of his movement. And so we'll look at him as a beacon of utilizing yoga for social justice, and we'll talk about ways to do that, both through business as well as in our personal lives, our lives as teachers, and our lives as students. Of course, Module 5 is where there's a lot of feedback. There's a lot of people that have kind of gone through this journey and decided what they think about yoga. Some people decide they want to become teachers, so that's going to be molded in class, but also it's a good opportunity to reach out and get some one-on-one counseling as far as how you're going to go about your career if you're going to go into the profession or into business. And then a lot of other people, they just want to take the knowledge and apply that to their personal practice. And so Module 5, you kind of see a little bit of a split there in terms of which direction that they're going. Other than that, Module 5 does have an exam. It's not like a final, it's not a cumulative final exam. To be honest with you, if you took the time to watch this video, sometimes I say there's a cumulative exam, but there's not. And if there is, it's a joke. So don't tell anybody that, though, because the people that don't study, it's fun to mess with them and tell them that there's a really important cumulative exam, but there's not. There's just an exam for each module. All right.